The following person is Andy Galvan, a descendant of a California mission Native American who says his Ohlone great-great-great-great-grandfather was forced into the mission. Let's see what he says and what firsthand documentation he references to support such a strong view.
More than 245 years ago, when people from the local village of Chuchui walked through the doors of Mission San Francisco de Asís and were baptized as Christians. My great-great-great-great-grandparents, Poilemja, whose Christian name is Faustino, from the Bay Miwok village of Saklan, which is modern-day Walnut Creek, California, and his wife, Jock Bachme, Christian name Obelinda, from the Ohlone village of Halkeen, which is modern-day Hayward, were two of the thousands of American Indians the Spanish rounded up from the surrounding countryside. I say the Spanish rounded up because we know clearly my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Poilemja, he did not voluntarily come into Mission Dolores. We know from the mission records that on the day he arrives in San Francisco, and that there are 18 other adult males from his village who were brought into the mission, and on that very day they were baptized. There was no training in the religion. It was simply, you're here, we're going to pour water on you, we're going to make you Christians, and now you need to stay here. So sometimes when people say there wasn't forced conversion, I use that as a qualifier to say, excuse me, but I don't know any other way you can describe forced conversion than baptizing somebody on the day they arrive. They're speaking their native language. The padre is performing the ritual in Latin, and the soldiers are speaking Spanish. Do you think the native people had any idea what the words meant?
He admits he is unable to fathom alternative motives for natives to join missions for protection or alternative resources, motives that attracted natives throughout America.
Often, the missionaries are accused of forcing conversions. The handbook Itinerario para Párrocos de Indios, which occupied a place second only to the Bible, stated that enforced baptisms shall be considered null and void.
The evangelization process of the Spanish Empire saw forced conversions as illegal and taboo that could lead to severe punishment, like those punishments applied to Christopher Columbus, Nuno de Guzman, and Gonzalo Pizarro. Several authorities explicitly rejected the use of force in conversion. Pope Paul III in Sublimis Deus, 1537, declared that the indigenous peoples should not be deprived of their liberty or property even if they were not Christians, reinforcing the Catholic Church's opposition to forced conversions. In 1528, Emperor Carlos V decreed, "We establish and command that the Indians of any province may not be confronted or warred upon in order to receive the Holy Catholic faith, or to give us obedience, or for any other purpose." Law 9, Title 4 of Book 3. These are just a few early authoritative examples that reflect the official stance and the general attitude of Hispanic Catholics that the natives' were conversion to Christianity was to be voluntary, not forced. In addition, the Spanish Inquisition itself prohibited the judging of natives, since these Christian concepts were completely new. Given the official decrees by the Catholic Church, the Spanish Empire, and the general attitude of Hispanic society, the accusation of widespread forced conversions becomes much less credible.
So I can trace the milestones of my ancestors' lives through the old mission records, the baptismal registers, the marriage registers, and the death registers. Poilemja, Faustino, who I mentioned earlier, was baptized at Mission Dolores in 1794.
He negates to address why his own great-great-great-great-grandfather refused to leave the following year in 1795, when over 200 neophytes just walked away. The Spanish soldiers did not even try to bring that many back. Why did his ancestor refuse to leave with them? Not only does his great-great-great-great-grandfather choose not to leave, but brings his family years afterward to join the missions.
Jock Bachme Obelinda, a later convert, was baptized in 1802. Their 14-year-old son, Culpesque, Liberatos, his Christian name, was baptized in 1801. The above chronology concerning my ancestors is what the written documents show. But there are no first-person accounts to tell me what Faustino, Obelinda, Liberato, and Efrina Maria felt. I often wonder what their lives were like before the Spanish invaded. What did they really think about those padres, as much as I'd like to know?
Funny how Andy Galvan inadvertently admits he does not know what really happened when his great-great-great-great-grandfather arrived at the mission, nor does he have access to how he felt or whether he was really forced into baptism. Andy admits he is relying on personal interpretation of baptismal records. He wonders and imagines that his ancestors were coerced and forced into the mission without any concrete evidence it played out that way. This perspective of viewing the natives as mere survivors coerced into the mission system downplays their intelligence and participation. Far from empowered, he probably does not know that because, like many descendants of important natives, their ancestry does not translate to intellectual superiority. One does not need much education to see how these narratives contradict. The missions were not easy places to live in. This is pretty evident because the time was not easy. The idea of the noble savage has already been proven false. There was no happy Arcadia before the arrival of the Spanish. In conclusion, although I see Andy Galvan as embellishing his ancestors' forced conversion, I do not feel it would ever be out of the realm of possibility. The California missions generally prohibited forcing baptisms and were established by small groups of Spaniards whose policies were enforced by the native majorities. Given Spanish soldiers and religious missionaries were always a small minority in comparison to the thousands of California natives, both the California mission's faults and accomplishments belong to both Spanish and native people who were all complicit in its expansion and function.
I often wonder what their lives were like, as much as I'd like to know.